Hi, I'm Janus and welcome to the Mintay Papers YouTube channel. I'm here to show you this tutorial on how I created this mini album using the Mintay Forever Young collection. I'm using the 12x12 papers and the fuzzy cut from the front cover. Later in the video, I'll also be using the new cardboard stickers. So the first thing we need to set up is the cover for the album. I start off with cutting 2 pieces of cardboard. This is from a box I got during Christmas and I cut it at about 5 by 7 inches, and I'm using paper number 2 as the cover for these 2 cardboards. I smeared some glue all over it. Gently folding in the sides and cut the corners to make sure it's snug and fit flush against the edges of my cardboard. I'm simply going to glue them in place. Once both cardboards have been covered, I'm using a piece of faux leather and placing the cardboards about ½ an inch away from the edges, and I'm gluing my cards onto the leather. I'm using all-purpose glue for this project, but if you have other more heavy-duty glue or any glue that works best with leather, by all means you may use those. As for me, I'm simply using clips to secure the edges while I wait for the glue to dry. Now, the reason I had to use an extra paper design on my cover is because I'm using leather that has holes in it. So that way, even though the cardboards peek through the holes, they match the whole look of the album. Once everything is dry, I'm going to cover up the inside of the spine with some pink foam sheet. And because I want it thicker, I folded in a part of the cardboard at about ½ an inch on each one. So my album spine is at the right thickness that I desire. I'm still using some clips to secure them in place until the glue dries, along with weighing it down with something heavy. Okay, now that's done, I'm using paper number 4 to cover up the rest of the cardboard, this time inside my album's cover. And there you have it. I'm ready to start creating my album's pages. So I take some white cardstock and cut 5 pieces. The length of each one is at about 6.5 inches tall, and I vary the thickness of each one from 2.5 inches to 2 inches, then 1.5, 1 inch, and the last one is at about 0.5 inches. I score each paper at about, 0.25 inches. I think I just eyeballed this one. Just make sure to crease each one thoroughly. If you notice, I fold each one several times to make sure they're well creased. This will allow my pages to turn with ease. The next step is to put some double-sided tape at the back part of each one. Leave the creased area alone for now. And I stick them on top of each other, starting from the thickest piece to the thinnest one at the end. So this is kind of how it looks like. Now I'll be gluing this to the spine of my album's cover, and I'll wait for that to dry once more. Then we're ready to place our pages. So I'm using some watercolor paper that I cut at about 6.5 by 4.5 inches. You'll need about 20 pieces of watercolor paper to create 10 pages. I glued each one on the spine along the left creased area that I folded earlier. And then I glued in the other side with the remaining 10 pieces of my watercolor papers. That way you can utilize both parts of the page. Now the last piece to complete the whole book is to add some lace on each end of my cover. That way I can use it to tie the album closed. This is very handy because I'm expecting this to be a very chunky and a very thick kind of album once I place in all my elements inside. Before we start creating our page layouts, I prepare the placeholders for my photos early on. So I'm using paper number 6, which are the frames. I used 2 of these since 10 of the frames I used for placeholders. The remaining, I used the back part, the decorative designs. I fuzzy cut it and I'm going to use them to embellish the album later on. I also made some paper rosettes by using the extra papers from the inside of the frames that I cut up and folding them like so. So it's kind of just like a simple accordion fold. And then I'm just going to glue them along the edges and form them into a circle. I'm sure there's a lot more easier processes online that you can watch to create this one, but this is how I did mine without any guide. So forgive me if it's a little bit tedious. So I made about 5 of these to decorate my album. And once that's all done, I can start decorating my pages. The first thing I do is add some texture to my pages by using some modeling paste and stencils. I just place them randomly around each page. Another thing I added is I used some of my modeling paste on these molds that I have and glued them in some parts of the pages. So this is kind of how it looks like. So let me just finish off the rest of the pages and we'll move on to painting each one. So now this time around, I'll be painting over each page. So as you can see with the first page I'm working on, I just paint over it with some watercolor paints. And once that's dry, I'm simply playing around with the layout. It's a good idea to prepare everything in advance. So just fuzzy cut all the elements you want to use and just play around with it once you're ready to work on it. And before I glue in my fuzzy cuts, I used some glitter acrylics and smeared them around to add some sparkle to the design. I'm taking in my hot glue and just gluing everything into place. And since this is an album I'm making for my daughter, I'm using some stickers to put her name on different page. I'll be repeating the same steps as I've done with the next pages in the album. I'm playing around with just 3 colors for the entire album, which is purple, pink, and yellow. I think it matches well with the Forever Young collection. Now here is where I start adding in the cardboard stickers along with the paper rosettes I was working on earlier. I also use some foam sheets to add in more dimension to my layout. So if you notice, I'm simply putting in placeholders for my photos. Using some of the frames from the collection, and this type of placeholder I'm working on right now will allow me to kind of just slip in a photo at the top area of the frame. That way I can just replace it with something else in case I want to use a different photo. It'll be something detachable and not fixed onto the album. So I'm just going to repeat the same process I did earlier on. So the first step is to paint over them with watercolor, then smear in some glitter acrylics. Another embellishment I added in were these gift box fillers that I found at my local craft store, along with some star sequins that I think is used for resin projects. I just sprinkled them around while the glitter acrylics was still wet. It kind of adds in a lot more of that party feel to the background. I finished painting the backgrounds for all the other pages, so this is how they look like so far. I'm going to start working on the layouts using the frames and fuzzy cuts and the cardboard stickers. Some of the stickers are wider than my album, so I had to cut the phrases into two parts. That way it fits better into my layout. And if you noticed, I'm working on 10 pages for this album. But if you want to make the pages lesser than that, you may do so. Just limit the number of white cardstocks we used earlier on the spine. As for me, there were a lot of pictures I wanted to document for my daughter's life that I wanted to get as many in this album as I can put. And you may also notice how messier and messier my table gets the longer I worked on this project. I'm sure a lot of you crafters out there can relate to this. You start off having a clean table at the start, and at the end of the day, it's just utter chaos. Anyway, don't be afraid to lay your papers as best as you like. The good thing about this collection, and really any collection from Mintay, is that they're so cohesive that you don't need to worry about whether they match the theme you're working on. Okay, now I only have about 2 more pages left to do, and I'll show you a flip through of the whole album once everything is finished. The last page, I simply decorated it without a frame, but I did leave off the center an area where I can slip in a photo when I do wish to add one more in the future. Last part is to decorate the front of the album's cover. I used a dainty paper cutout where I painted it with some yellow and pink watercolor, and I just glued it in place at the center of my cover. Along with this, I also glued in this sticker that is also part of the Forever Young cardboard stickers. I also decorated the spine with this bookmark, which is actually for one of my travel journals, but I decided to cut it up and use it as an embellishment for this album. And I'm done. So let me show you what it looks like. I'm very excited to be placing the pictures in this soon. And that is all for this tutorial. I know it was a lengthy one, but I do hope you enjoyed watching it. If you're planning to create something inspired by this tutorial, please do tag us, Mintay Papers and me, Janus, when you post them on social media, so we can get to see your wonderful creations. You can also join in the Mintay Papers Inspo Place group on Facebook for more inspirational crafts using Mintay. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the Mintay Papers YouTube channel, and I'll see you again soon. Bye!